All right, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome. Thank you so much for joining us for our webinar on the Ghost Kitchen business model hosted by the 15 Group. I'm Natalie, the communications coordinator here at the 15 Group, and we're so excited to have you with us today to discuss a really relevant and widespread topic in the food service industry right now. Before we get started, I just want to let you know that there is a Q&A feature available on the left side of your screen. So if you have any questions or comments at any point during the presentation, please feel free to leave them there for us to see, and we'll be having a question period at the end. Okay, so just to kick things off today, we're going to start off with a quick poll to get started. So you should see some questions coming up on your screen shortly. So please take a minute and let us know which one of these celebrities you think owns a ghost kitchen business. All right, I see the results coming in. I'm just going to give everyone a couple more seconds here. Okay, we've got a bunch of answers in, and you should be able to see the results now. So you can see that the majority of people voted for Mario Lopez, and the answer is actually that 3 of these are right. So Mariah Carey has a business, Mariah Cookies. Rapper Tyga also has Tyga Bites, and then Mario Lopez is correct. He also has a ghost kitchen business. So this may or may not come as a surprise to see how widespread ghost kitchens are becoming, especially among celebrities and some big names in the restaurant industry. But we'll be talking about that a little bit more later. Now I'd like to take a minute and introduce our presenter for today, David Hopkins, president of the 15 Group. David has over 30 years of experience in the restaurant industry. He began his career in restaurant management after graduating with an honors business degree from Queen's University. From 1990 to 1997, David held various senior management positions within some of Toronto's top restaurant companies. In 1997, David joined Surcorp to lead the financial accounting department of one of their most profitable divisions, Signature Restaurants. During his 5 years with Surcorp, David reconstructed the division's information processing into a centralized accounting department and helped the division grow from 4 restaurants to 9, each with sales over $4 million annually. In 2001, David left Surcorp to form the 15 Group, one of North America's leading hospitality consultancies. With offices in Toronto and Vancouver, they now have over 30 industry experts who cover all aspects of restaurant operations, from developing new concepts to maximizing restaurant profits through effective sales generation and disciplined cost control management. The 15 Group clients range from owner-operated establishments to multi-unit restaurant corporations. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to David Hopkins, who's our presenter for today.
Thank you, Natalie, for that introduction. It's great to be here. It's great to be hosting a webinar. You know, we've done many a webinar in the past, but they've always been for someone else, whether it be Restaurants Canada or another organization. This is the first time that we've actually done a webinar of our own. So, you know, after this, we're going to, I know Natalie's going to coordinate a survey after, and we would love your feedback, because if it sucked, then let us know. We'll never do one again. Or if you find it valuable, then let us know as well, because you know, we'll keep doing them if we feel the right opportunity. And certainly this was the right opportunity, because this whole topic of ghost kitchens has just shot through the roof. You know, we've been working on ghost kitchen stuff for probably 3 years now, maybe 4 years, but it's never really been a mainstream thing. And it is now, if not the hottest topic searched with regards to food and beverage on the internet, it's one of the hottest topics. And the inquiries that we've been getting around ghost kitchens have been massive. So anyway, so we felt the need to do a webinar and bestow whatever information we can to people on this topic. So Quick little blurb on us. Many of you, I'm sure, know us already. And by the way, we had a huge turnout, which just shows the magnitude of what ghost kitchens and what people are interested in right now in the food and beverage space. I think we had well over 100 people register for the webinar, which is fantastic. So as Natalie mentioned, we were founded in 2001. We've worked now with over 1,000 food and beverage operations. We have offices both in Toronto and Vancouver, but we do work all across North America, primarily in Canada until about 2 years ago when we branched out into the US. So now all across North America. And we have a team of 35 people covering pretty much every aspect of food and beverage. And we do two things. We go into existing restaurant operations and make them a lot more profitable. And the second thing we do is we develop and create new restaurant concepts. And that may be for hotels, for golf courses, for wineries, and quite often for individuals who are looking to get into the food and beverage space. And we've been very successful in that space. And here are some of the concepts that we've helped to develop and create. And I'm not saying we've been very successful to toot our own horn, but you know, the large majority of concepts that we help to develop and launch have been very successful. And it plays into what we're going to talk about today. And that's because of something that's so important in any business, but certainly in food and beverage space, which is proper planning. So when we develop new food and beverage concepts, we go to great lengths to understand what the concept is, what the brand is, what the menu is, what the guest experience is going to be, and how all of those are going to play into profitability and the financial model. So I'm probably going to bore you a bit today because we can't talk about any food and beverage operation without talking about profitability. As Natalie mentioned, my background is business first and foremost. And, you know, as I said, I think a lot of the reason for our success is we think about every aspect and how they're going to work holistically together to come up with a profitable solution, which is what people are in business for, right? So anyway, I may bore you a bit. There are going to be a lot of numbers on the page, but there are a lot of concepts I'm going to talk about, which regardless if you're a number person or understand the numbers, I think they're important concepts when we talk about ghost kitchens. So let's get right at it. Ghost kitchens, let's just quickly look at a definition of ghost kitchen. So a professional food preparation and cooking facility set up for the preparation of delivery-only meals. I should have a footnote where I got this definition, but it's not mine. I grabbed it off the internet somewhere. It might be Wikipedia or something. But anyway, we're talking about a kitchen for delivery-only meals, and I pretty much stick to that when I think of ghost kitchens. There are a lot of variations of ghost kitchens, but you know, to me, a food hall that does a lot of delivery is not a ghost kitchen. That's a food hall that happens to do a lot of delivery. A ghost kitchen, in true essence, is supposed to be a ghost, a hidden kitchen. Sometimes they're called dark kitchens, but that only services that delivery market. So ghost kitchens have been around for a while. The concept's been around for a while, but obviously it's a hot topic now. And it came about originally because of a couple of things that were happening in the restaurant space. One is that rents were becoming incredibly high, especially in urban markets, but also just rental spaces became hard for people to get. So there were high rents, and you know, that led to people thinking, well, how can I avoid this high rent that I need to pay in order to get business? And the second thing, obviously, is that delivery is shot through the roof, right? You know, when we developed food and beverage concepts, you know, 10, 15 years ago, we never considered takeout and delivery as a major component of any business. Whereas now, any restaurant we develop, we don't always factor in delivery, but we certainly in the conceptual development think about how takeout and delivery are going to play into it and what it's going to mean for that operation, both in terms of revenues and flow. So these two things led to people thinking, how can I avoid big rents and capitalize on this huge delivery market, what's currently booming and has been building? You know, it's through the roof now with COVID, but it's been growing steadily for years and years. So So when we look at the core reason why ghost kitchens have become important, I want to touch on a couple of key concepts which, make ghost kitchens somewhat difficult to succeed at. And it's because a lot of the fundamentals of why these two factors played into the rise of ghost kitchens, they also make it challenging for ghost kitchens to succeed. So the first concept that I want to just touch on is the fact that revenue reigns supreme in food and beverage. And what I mean by that is that revenue is the single most important thing to food and beverage success. You can have tight cost control, you have great staff training, whatever, but if you don't have great revenue, then you're not going to succeed. And more importantly than just revenue is what we call incremental revenue. And that's the revenue once you're already in business. What can we add on in terms of additional revenue? So many people make the mistake in food and beverage of thinking that in terms of incremental revenue, that 15% of it falls to the bottom line. That's because we have this understanding that, if I'm looking at an overall food and beverage P&L, I'm hoping to make 15% profit. I may make less. The Canadian average profit is only 4 or 5%. Our company, just so you know, the 15 Group, we were named because we feel that every restaurant should make at least 15% profit on sales. But so people make the mistake of thinking, if I add $100,000 of revenue, then I'm going to add 15,000 to my bottom line profit. And that's a mistake, because the actual incremental revenue that goes to the bottom line is 50%. And this is why incremental revenue is so important. So just to run through that in a bit more detail, if I have a restaurant and I'm already open, I'm in business, and I can add $200,000 more in revenue, the only associated costs I have with that, I have my product cost, which for this example, I've used a 32% product cost. It might be 30, it might be 28, whatever. I have incremental labor costs. And this we've found to be in and around 10%. It might be 14, 15%, it might be 8%, but on average, it's in around 10%. And what this is the additional labor that you need to service that incremental revenue. And it's not what you see on your P&L at 30% or 26% or 34%, because you already have all your core operational labor in place. So as you can imagine, if you're open for lunch already and you're doing $500 in sales for lunch one day, if you're going to do another $100 and go to $600 in sales, you're probably not adding a single other body to your staff team. You might have a little bit more prep labor, but certainly you're not incurring any marginal additional labor cost. So when you add sales revenue to an existing operation, your incremental labor cost is pretty minimal. And then the only other expenses you might have takeout supplies, paper supplies. You're going to have credit card commissions. You might have some repairs and maintenance if you're opening and closing doors a bit more. And you're going to have some promo on those sales that you've now generated, whether it's giveaways or QSAs for times that we've messed up an order by mistake. But you can see at the end of the day, your incremental profit from your incremental revenue is massive. It's 50%, or in some cases 55, or some cases 45. So when we talk of food and beverage operations, this whole concept of incremental revenue is the most important thing to increasing profitability. And this plays into that whole rent concept. Because if you imagine that, I'm paying a crazy amount of rent for a great space. So let's pretend, for example, that you've got a ghost kitchen operation and you're considering moving that ghost kitchen operation to a space where you can do all that ghost kitchen business, the delivery business, but add on revenues for takeout and for people coming in and dining in your little 20 seat space or whatever. If you're paying $90 a square foot premium for that space, so maybe you're paying $15 a square foot for your ghost kitchen, but now you're going to pay $105 for this premium space. If that brings in $500,000 a year of incremental revenue, then you're making another $118 by having that storefront, having that retail space, having that environment that allows you to service way more than that delivery business. And even if you look at that incremental revenue for that great space as only $350,000, you're still adding a lot of money to the bottom line. So the idea of doing this ghost kitchen to avoid high-paying rents is a challenge fundamentally, because those high-paying rents are delivering all kinds of business and revenue and incremental revenue to get more money to your bottom line. So first concept to remember is revenue reigns supreme. The second concept that I want to kind of run through this is third-party delivery ain't cheap. Okay, we all know, and we've seen all kinds of articles about these 30% delivery fees, and that's definitely not an inexpensive proposition. A lot of restaurants make the mistake of thinking, well, I can't do third-party delivery because it just doesn't make sense. And again, they're looking at their 15% bottom line and thinking, well, I can't pay 30% delivery, then I'm losing 15%. But again, that's a mistake. You've got to look at the 50% profit. And delivery, third-party delivery makes sense for almost every operation, again, because of the incremental revenue factor. You might have a high-end business that doesn't translate well to delivery, although a lot of them during this pandemic have pivoted to delivery. But overall, the companies like Uber Eats and Skip the Dishes, DoorDash, they've all gone to great lengths to figure out what makes sense for you in terms of what you can afford and what you can still pay them while you still make money. So when you add on delivery revenue, you still make money off that, even with the high 30% cost that the delivery fees might be. So it still makes sense when you're looking at it as an add-on revenue stream for an existing business. But when you're building an entire ghost kitchen model concept around this whole concept of third-party delivery, that 30% becomes extremely challenging. So those are a couple of underlying concepts. And circling back to rent and delivery, like I said, these are key drivers to why ghost kitchens came about, but there are flaws with the essence of why those things might be good for the ghost kitchen market. So what I'm going to do now is take you through a few scenarios. So, it's kind of hard to do a webinar on ghost kitchens because there are so many variations of it, and we're seeing so many offshoots of the whole ghost kitchen concept. Like I mentioned, we're seeing food halls that now have ghost kitchens attached to them, or kind of an integrated concept. So I'm going to run through some of the more often ones that we've been dealing with. And we probably worked on our first ghost kitchen model conceptually, I would say about 3 years ago, but I think ghost kitchens have been around in theory for, I think even 6-7 years. And I could even be wrong with that, but certainly we got involved about 3 years ago with a number of people reaching out for different reasons. So the first thing I want to touch on is the single brand model. Okay, so this is where you want to open up a food and beverage space and you're thinking, okay, you know what? I don't want to go and pay Yonge and King downtown Toronto rents. I want to do this my own concept, and I want to run it in a ghost kitchen model to capitalize, like we said, on low rent and this huge delivery trend. So if I look at what I need in terms of revenue to make that work, this is kind of an income statement that you might look at for this model. So you have ghost kitchen revenue of $1 million. Your product cost, I've just for simplicity's sake put at 30%. Back of house labor, I have running at 18%, which I can get into in a bit more detail. But honestly, that's pretty tight. You're running a pretty tight kitchen on $1 million sales. You could do a little better potentially, but you've got your operating costs, you've got your delivery fees at 30%, you've got some promo, and you've got cheap fixed costs because you're in this ghost kitchen low rent space. So you can see the profit from this. It's okay. I mean, it's 7% to the bottom line, nothing great. But the biggest challenge with this whole single brand model is this line where I've got ghost kitchen revenue at $1 million. And if you think you're going to open a single brand concept that's going to be a ghost kitchen and do $1 million in revenue, you're either the luckiest person around or you're mistaken. Most restaurants just, in all of everything I say today, there are going to be some exceptions to the rule. But when we do our planning, we always look at what can we count on, what makes sense, not what's going to be the upper end of what could be successful, but what can we succeed at in that middle range, right? So if you look at a typical restaurant, a quick serve restaurant, maybe it's a burger concept, maybe it's a healthy food eating concept, their revenue generally might be split something like this, where they're doing $750,000 in the restaurant, meaning it's either takeout or it's sit down. And I'm not talking table service in this case. I'm talking a quick serve environment or fast casual, maybe. And then they're doing 25% of the revenues in delivery. And that number can range greatly depending on your concept. It might be as low as 5 to 10% in delivery, and it might be as high as 30 to 35%. But, you know, for averages, we're saying 25%. And that's what your overall model can look like, right? 75% of revenue from the restaurant, 25% from delivery. So if I want to launch a single brand ghost kitchen concept, and I'm going to take that $250,000 and put it into a ghost kitchen model, I'm going to lose my shirt. Because I just don't have that critical mass. You know, revenue reigns superior, right? That's the important thing. And $250,000 does not a food and beverage concept make. So, you know, in this model, and, you know, some of these numbers may fluctuate up or down, but it's a losing proposition. So, you know, we've worked with a couple of clients on the idea of doing this single brand ghost kitchen model, and we haven't had a lot of success in making it, making sense of it moving forward. And as such, none of our clients have moved forward with this concept. So that brings me to the next evolution of this, which is the multi-brand model. And we're seeing more and more of these open up, or at least we're getting more inquiries about conceptually, how do we launch this kind of concept? And this is a much more exciting version than the single brand. So in the multiple brand, the idea is, yes, you're going to get $250,000 in revenue, let's say, as an example for each brand, but you're going to have multiple brands running out of that same kitchen. So now, instead of being a $250,000 operation, which makes no sense, now I'm at a $1.5 million operation, which can make a lot of sense. So as you can see in this model, I'm sitting here at a profitability of $183,000. 12% going to the bottom line. Now, I do want to highlight that there are still inherent challenges with this. And one of the biggest ones here, there we go. One of the biggest ones here is this labor cost line. So, you know, I challenged one of my chef consultants on our team and an operations consultant to give me a labor schedule to execute this concept with, you know, a burger brand, a pizza brand, a Mexican brand, 6 different brands operating under one ghost kitchen roof. And I put $260,000 in labor to execute this concept. And I'll tell you, my team were challenged in getting me a schedule that could execute at this that amount. Because keep in mind, you know, yes, you have efficiencies from running all these brands, but, you know, you've also got a lot going on in this kitchen, right? It's not like I'm just pumping out burgers all day. I'm pumping out all kinds of food, you know, from varying different tangents, right? So there are economies of scale, but, you know, I think hitting this kind of 17% labor cost is probably the better end of the scale. So when we look at this multi-brand model, and we've had, like I said, a number of clients reach out to us to look at 2 different kind of directions of this. And the first one is that you could do your own brands, right? And the second one is you could do a franchise. Now, I will be the first to say that, generally speaking, and I apologize if there are any franchise companies on the webinar, but I don't love franchise models to begin with. You know, you're paying 6% royalty, you're paying 3% ad fee. So generally speaking, I don't, and there's a reason why a lot of franchisees aren't successful. Now, I don't want to knock it. There are a lot of great franchises, and some franchise concepts you can be extremely successful as a franchisee, but generally I don't like the franchise model for a franchisee, and I like people developing and launching their own brands and going that route. So let's take a look at that first. So, you know, here's the model we talked about, and the big question in this is kind of, what are these brands going to be? I've got 6 different brands that I need to launch. And I think the challenge with a ghost kitchen model where you're launching your own brands is that you've got 0 street presence, you've got 0 guest experience within a space, and it becomes very difficult to create a brand identity. So, if you can envision that you go on Uber Eats or something and you want to order some sort of chicken sandwich, and you go on there and you're looking at Chick-fil-A, you're looking at Popeyes, maybe KFC, maybe Mary Brown's, maybe Swiss Chalet, or maybe the Real Deal chicken concept. I can almost guarantee you that the majority of people are not ordering from the Real Deal chicken concept because they have no attachment to that and no connection to that brand identity. Whereas the other five, we know what they're about, we know what we're getting, we've probably eaten there before, and you know what, we feel good about ordering. So, where I've got this model for a multiple brand concept of a ghost kitchen, and I've got it profitable right now with promo at 37,000. That will not work when you're doing your own brand development. In reality, that advertising line I've now bumped up to 150,000, and that might not even be enough, right? You've got to establish a brand identity, a conceptual place in the market, which is becoming a very competitive market for people to order from your concept instead of the many, many out there that they already know. So you can see when I change this model and add in $150,000 of advertising, my profitability kind of goes to the crapper, and it's not even close to what we would hope for it to be. So, it's not often I will say this, but if you're looking at a multi-brand model for a ghost kitchen, I somewhat prefer the franchisee model, where you're developing a multi-brand unit, but instead of using your own brands, you're becoming a franchisee for a number of different brands under one ghost kitchen roof. And there are a few reasons why I like this model. So, and just to be clear, I like this model, but I don't love it. And if you haven't noticed already, I don't love the whole ghost kitchen concept to begin with. But we will get to a concept within the ghost kitchen environment that I do love. But so if you're going this multiple brand route and you go the franchisee route, the challenge then becomes, and you can see here on this P&L, I'm running a 3% bottom line profit, which is, not going to cut it. And that's because I now have these huge royalty and ad funds that I have to pay to these franchisees. And I've used a 6% royalty here and a 3% ad fund just for reference sake. Could be more, could be less, but I think that's a good average. So that eats into my profitability huge. But I think there are a couple of advantages with going the franchise route. One is, if you look at these revenues that I'm going to capture for each one of these franchises, I think if I'm going the franchise route and I pick the right location and I've got the right franchises and the right franchising partners, I can do better on these revenues potentially than what I'm seeing right here. And so, if we look at a different model where I'm now doing $500,000 out of each one of these franchisees or franchise concepts, you can see now the bottom line is starting to make more sense. Now, don't get me wrong, doing $500,000 for a single brand out of a ghost kitchen concept, whether a franchise brand or whether it's not, that's a tall order. Like, it's not a slam dunk that, hey, I'm going to open a ghost kitchen, I'm going to do 6 franchise brands, and I'm going to do 500 grand of each one, and it'll be awesome. So, don't think that this is an easy thing to do. But there comes another opportunity with this franchise multi-brand model that we don't see with the one where you're doing your own brand. And this is this line item, the delivery fees, right? So these delivery fees at 30%, when you get critical mass of volume, they just don't make sense anymore. And they have to make sense when you're doing your own brands, because you're relying on the Uber Eats and you're relying on the Skip the Dishes and DoorDash. You're relying on those entities to kind of push your concept out and get you orders. But with franchise models, you've got a lot of people that know what they want, and they're going to that franchise website and saying, you know what, I feel like a bucket from KFC tonight, so I'm going to the KFC website and I'm ordering. So there becomes the opportunity to not pay so much in delivery fees and set up your own delivery network within your ghost kitchen concept. Just to look at some numbers in big picture, if you have 5 delivery drivers, if you have 5 delivery drivers, and you're paying them $20 an hour, and they're operating 8 hours a day for you and 365 days a year, you're paying $290,000 to set up your own delivery network. Now, you definitely, I don't think, can do entirely your own delivery network. But so in this kind of final model that I've got here, you can see I've set up a model where half of your business is coming from your own delivery driver network. And I've got it at 250,000 here because I don't even think you need the 5 drivers, 8 hours a day, that kind of model. And the other half of your business is coming from the Uber Eats, the Skip the Dishes, all those platforms where you need to pay the higher fees. But, you know, when you look at this model, I've still got the royalty, I've still got the ad fund in there. And now I've got a profitability model that's 15% profit on sales. And this I can somewhat make sense of. Again, I do want to emphasize, you know, the idea of doing 500 grand per franchise concept, it's not a slam dunk. And the idea that this labor cost on $3 million in sales is going to run 430,000, that's tight labor. Like that's tight labor. So, you know, there are a number of things that you need to still consider when doing this, because if our sales are actually only 350,000 per concept, and if our labor is 20% more than what I've got here, all of a sudden your profit's not looking so good again. So, you know, I think from this you can see, and like, you know, I think you can get the sense from me that I'm not sold on the whole ghost kitchen ideology. I'm not sold on that it's a slam dunk that I keep hearing in various different avenues. And I've talked to a number of people that are in the ghost kitchen space, and I'm hearing the same thing. I'm hearing kind of, you know what, we'll see how it goes. Yeah, it kind of looks like it might be okay, but I'm not, let's not call it a slam dunk yet. So the last concept, though, that I do want to talk about, which I do think is somewhat of a slam dunk and where the future is going in terms of ghost kitchens, is the existing business add-on. And what I mean by this is if you've got an existing business, whether it's an existing quick serve, fast casual, even potentially a full serve restaurant, and you want to add on a ghost kitchen concept to run out of your kitchen, I think that can be a huge win. And again, largely because we're dealing with incremental revenue. And if you've got an existing business and you can layer on incremental revenue in a way that makes sense, then that can just help you with more on the bottom line. So what we're talking about here is, you know, maybe I've got my real deal chicken concept, a phenomenal concept. But maybe I've got that, and maybe it's, you know, downtown Toronto, downtown Vancouver, or Calgary, and it's a, I don't know, 30, 40 seat fast casual concept where we do a great chicken program. We got chicken sandwiches. Maybe we've got rotisserie chicken. I don't know. We've got a great concept that's successful in its own right. And we're going to take our kitchen, and instead we're either going to run a separate franchise concept out of that in a ghost kitchen model, or we're going to create our own brand and run that out of a ghost kitchen model. And in this scenario, I prefer that you do your own brand, and I'll tell you why in a second. But, you know, if you're looking at this, and again, this could be a huge opportunity for catering companies, for home meal replacement companies, for any company that's got an operation running that wants to utilize their existing business, their existing space to layer on some incremental revenues. So when we look at this real deal chicken existing space, again, this might be what their current situation is, right? They've got $750,000 of eat-in or takeout business already, and they've already layered in some real deal delivery business through third-party apps where they make some more incremental revenue, and it adds to the bottom line. Then the idea is that you run another ghost kitchen out of the concept and layer on, even if it's just $150,000 of incremental revenue, you can see that you're adding a good chunk of change to the bottom line. And that's the whole concept behind this. And I think this is kind of the wave of the future, and where a lot of existing businesses can capitalize on that ghost kitchen concept. Let me see how we're doing on time here. Oh, not bad, not bad. I wanted to keep this to about 40, 45 minutes. I think I'm right on track. So, I'm going to sum up with a couple of things that we touched on and a couple of things you need to think of if you're considering a ghost kitchen, either as a new startup or as a layer on to your existing business. So the first thing, if you're considering right now, and I hate to be blunt, but if you're considering a single brand ghost kitchen model, don't. If you're considering that at all, I would highly suggest you consider doing it as a full existing restaurant that's got a storefront that gives you the opportunity to create a brand identity and have takeout business and dine, some small seating dine-in business. And you'll be much better off doing that and then potentially layering on a ghost kitchen behind that. If you're looking at doing the multi-brand model, here's what we would recommend. One is definitely consider a franchise operation. If you're looking to do all your own brands in a multi-brand concept, I think you're going to be challenged. If anything, what we would recommend is maybe get 4 or 5 franchises and then layer on your own 2 brands within that overall concept. So you can establish your own brand identities, but while kind of piggybacking on the backbone of successful franchises that allow you to get that critical revenue. 2 is look for locations that are underserviced, right? If you're going to do this with franchise operations, you definitely want to do it. And this is why a lot of ghost kitchens are popping up, or the concepts are popping up in rural areas, right? Downtown Toronto, I don't think is an ideal place for a ghost kitchen concept because of all the competition that's coming in now from existing restaurants. So looking for locations that are underserviced by a variety of different concepts. Certainly looking for unique but known and rising brands might be a good opportunity, both to get a better royalty deal, but also to bring unique brands to a suburban market or a rural market. And then the last thing is, for sure, consider your own delivery network, because if you're doing this franchise concept, you have the ability then to create your own much more efficient delivery network than paying the high premiums that third-party delivery services are charging. If you're looking at the existing business model, we would recommend a number of things. One is create your own add-on brand. And I mentioned before that I don't like going the franchise route. I like you creating your own add-on brand for this for a couple of reasons. But the main reason is because it allows you to create a brand that integrates well with whatever your existing operation is, right? So if you've got a business already that has a great pizza oven that's completely underutilized, now you can create an add-on brand that services that pizza oven, and you can do it in a way that makes sense to you, right? If you only want 6 pizzas, great. Or if you want to do a burger concept because you feel you can execute at that, it doesn't mean you necessarily need to do certain things that a franchise burger concept may require you to do. So create your own add-on brand. But if you're doing that, don't forget that there's a difference between a 7 and a 10. And I can tell you, we've had a couple of people reach out to us to create these, add-on brands. And they basically just they say, you know what, we're going to put out 6 burgers. We're going to order these burgers from Cisco and pump them out, and we're going to do some fries, and that's it. It's going to be awesome. You can't just magically create a food concept and a brand that's going to be a 7 out of 10 and expect you're going to be successful. The ghost kitchen or the delivery space is becoming incredibly competitive. So you need to have a 10 out of 10 experience, and experience does transcend beyond your own space into this delivery market, right? People have an experience and an attachment to the product that they're ordering. Don't, when you're doing this, overlook the effect that it's going to have on your current business. If you've got a business that's doing $800,000 in revenue and you layer on another $150,000 to $200,000 of delivery revenue through a ghost kitchen concept, that's not insignificant. So you need to make sure you plan appropriately and make sure that you're not damaging your existing business by layering on this ghost kitchen concept. And the last thing I'm going to say is, keep whatever additional brand or brands you add on as ghost brands. So don't try and combine brands in your space. So when we create quick serve concepts or any restaurant concept, we go to great lengths to create a guest experience, and brand's a huge part of that. And, you know, as much as revenue reigns superior and you want to drive additional revenue, if you've got a restaurant concept and you try and meld another concept and have them both doing takeout out of the same space and dine in out of the same space, you're basically completely degrading both brands and you'll end up hurting your own business. So if you're going to do this, make your one brand, your takeout concept, your flagship brand. That's what your storefront is all about, and run your subsequent brands as entirely ghost operations that aren't going to affect your current operation. I'm just going to close out with one final thought, and I think this is very important, and you know, people are overlooking this right now. And that final thought is that, you know what, we're in a pandemic right now, and things are not the way they're going to be in 6, 9, 12 months. So if I graphed out on a timeline chart what's gone on with the whole delivery model and the delivery concept, and I have delivery demand, you know, when the pandemic hit, it shot through the roof. And it shot through the roof. You know why? It shot through the roof because restaurants are closed in some markets, like Toronto right now. Other people are afraid to dine out, so they're ordering in. And demand has gone through the roof, and it's leveled out at this high level. And supply has gone and caught up to the demand way more than it was a year and a half ago, because people have gravitated towards this whole ghost kitchen concept because demand's gone through the roof, and because every single restaurant out there during the pandemic has had to pivot to this delivery model. Even restaurants that have no business doing delivery are doing delivery right now. Now, some of them obviously, you know, once this is all done, may not do delivery anymore, like a high-end restaurant may not think it's the right space for them. But right now, supply's gone through the roof, and it's continuing to go through the roof as more and more ghost kitchens are coming online and people are trying to service this demand for delivery. The thing I think everybody needs to be wary of is when this pandemic hits, the demand for delivery is going to fall off a cliff. And you may disagree with me, but I almost can guarantee it's going to fall off a cliff. And I'm a prime example, right? Right now, I'm ordering delivery 2 times a week. I tend to go and pick it up more because I'm trying to support the restaurants instead of the delivery companies. But I'm ordering takeout or delivery 2 times, maybe even 3 times a week sometimes. And I can guarantee when the pandemic's done, I'll order delivery about once a month, because that's not what I want to do. I want to go out to restaurants. I want to experience restaurants. I had one of my neighbors the other day said to me, if they never order delivery again, they'll be happy because they're so sick of delivery. So as much as demand for delivery is here to stay and it's increased, I think it's really going to level out way less than it currently is, higher than it was pre-COVID, but way less than it's currently running at. But the problem is supply is now going to be up at a high level. Ghost kitchens will have opened. There'll be a whole bunch of supply, and all these people pre-COVID that never even did delivery as part of their model have now added that as a layer in terms of their incremental revenue model. So my closing thought is, you know, be very wary of where we're going to be in 6, 9, 12 months, because where we're at right now in terms of this delivery space and in terms of where ghost kitchens are, I think is very different than where we're going to be in the future. So thank you for your time. I think I kept you pretty much 45 minutes. So, hey, not bad. I will hand it over to questions. I know if you've got questions, text them or not text them. You can do them online. And Natalie, if we have any questions, I'd be happy to answer a few if any have come through.
Thanks, David. Yeah, there's a couple of great questions that have come through. First of all, there's a question about whether or not you can get a recording of the webinar. So yes, we'll be sending out a recording to everybody later today. And the first question is from Natalia. She says, how does cross-contamination play in the multi-brand model?
Whew. That's a great question. You know, and it's something, if I had one of our chef consultants, I could have them speak more to it. But I'd say one of the considerations is this idea of running all these multiple concepts under one roof. And I did touch on that there's economies of scale for sure, but it's a lot to run under one umbrella. So there are economies of scale, but I think we have to be very cognizant of that. Like I said, it's not as easy as just running a burger concept and banging out burgers and fries all day long. In terms of cross-contamination, some franchises have very specific guidelines in terms of how you execute their product. They're going to have huge quality control things. But in terms of cross-contamination, I think you're still dealing with the health and safety procedures that we'd have in place in any restaurant. So I don't think there's too much consideration there as long as you're going about things properly. To use an example, if anybody knows the Pickle Barrel restaurant, I mean, they have about, 40 different food concepts running under one roof, and they can entirely function and have economies of scale and have no issues with cross-contamination. So I don't think there's any issue there, but I definitely think you have to put a lot of thought into how is this kitchen going to be both efficient and execute at a profitable level for all the different concepts, right?
Great. Okay. Our next question: is it reasonable to expect to be a kitchen that is eligible to operate multiple franchise brands? In other words, why would, say, a KFC want to share the kitchen with other concepts?
So yes and no. And you know what? A concept like KFC, I mean, the bigger concepts, they want to qualify you as a franchisor. So if you're new to running restaurants, then you're probably not going to necessarily get a great franchise to begin with. And this is why I mentioned that I think it's a great opportunity to come up to get franchises that are unique concepts that are coming into their own, but they may not be established like a KFC or a McDonald's or whatever. So those smaller franchises may be looking to get into markets that they aren't in at the moment. And as long as you can position that you are going to be a successful franchisee, that you're going to be a devoted manager to their brand and brand representer, then I think it's definitely an option for them moving forward. Because keep in mind, franchisors, they want to sell franchises, right? This is how they make their money. So if they can sell a franchise to you and there's no one else in that market space and nobody else that's considering, then it's a plus for you. But you do have to keep in mind, you've got to maintain their brand standards, maintain their execution standards. So it's not just as easy as I'm going to grab 6 franchises and I'll be running with it and I'll be good as gold. But it's a valid question, because if you're new to the restaurant space and you want to do one of these concepts, you're right. You can't just go to a KFC and, hey, I'm going to open you up as one of my 6 or 8 franchises in a ghost kitchen, and KFC is not going to be looking at you going, oh, this is awesome, we can't wait for you to do that. There's going to have to be some assurances, some salesmanship on your side to get that franchisee agreement going, right?
Okay, next question. If you add a ghost kitchen layer to an existing dine-in business in an urban location, do you not lose the benefits of cheaper rent?
Do you not lose the benefits of cheaper rent? I'm not 100% sure I understand the question, but if you've got an existing restaurant in an urban setting, you're already paying the rent. So the whole idea of layering on another ghost kitchen is to capture all that incremental revenue with no other associated costs other than product cost, some marginal labor, credit card commissions, potentially a few other expenses, but there's no additional rent, unless potentially you're talking about, if you're on a % rent deal in downtown Toronto or Vancouver, where you have a 6% rent deal on sales, in which case there is some rent. But nonetheless, even with that % rent, you're still adding more money to the bottom line. So the whole concept of this add-on is to layer on incremental revenue with no or at least minimal rent expense. I'm not sure if that answered the question, but hopefully it did.
Okay. Do you see any major players such as Sircorp coming out with delivery-only brands that operate out of their full-service restaurant kitchens?
You know what? I have no intel on that. As Natalie mentioned, I worked for Sircorp for a number of years, and I know a number of people in multi-unit large companies like that. So I have no intel on it, but I would be surprised if they're not. A company like Sircorp could certainly layer in a great ghost kitchen concept and execute it out of existing kitchens they already have. Like I think with the increase, and I've been a bit negative through this because I struggled to completely make sense of the ghost kitchen concept, but I don't want to take away from the fact that the whole delivery segment is growing and will continue to grow. I just don't think it'll be as big as it has been, obviously, the last 12 months. But it's continuing to grow because we as society are becoming two things. We're becoming increasingly impatient and lazy, and we're looking for a huge convenience factor, which kind of are the same thing, but a bit different. So I think that segment will continue to grow. If I'm at the office and I'm working hard and I'm in a rush, why would I go out and get lunch as opposed to just going on an app and ordering food and it's here in half an hour and I'm happy? So I think this segment will continue to grow. And I'd be surprised if a lot of these larger companies don't start looking at how do I capitalize on that delivery segment without competing against my own existing brand already, but just layering on more revenue to capture that space.
Someone is asking, what's your thought about Walmart and the Walmart Ghost Kitchen brand recent joint venture?
You know what? I'm going to reserve my comment on that because honestly, I haven't looked into that enough as I probably should to make an educated statement around it. It's interesting. The one thing I do want to say, and I'm going to say this about many things, is people get hyped about what's going on in the marketplace. And this isn't meant to be a slight against what's going on with Walmart and what have you. But people get hyped behind what they see in the marketplace, what the articles are about, and what big money gets put behind. And I would say to be cautious about what big money gets put behind because it doesn't always mean it's successful. And a prime example of that is this whole concept of these, why am I drawing a blank? Good food, Hello Fresh. I forget what the big one out of the States is, but with these ready meal kit delivery in place of groceries, which have done huge during the pandemic. But the reason why I would caution is because about 3 or 4 years ago, all these companies got huge amounts of funding. I'm talking millions upon millions of dollars in funding. But until the pandemic hit, they were all losing their shirt. And the biggest one, I can't remember the name, I'm drawing a blank, but the biggest company of that kind in the US was about to go bankrupt just before COVID hit because they just it wasn't making sense, even though they had had tons of financial investment behind them. And most of these companies are public, and you can go back and see how much money they lost over the years prior to the pandemic. So I would caution, you hear a lot of stuff going on, people putting millions of dollars into the ghost kitchen concept. Just because that's happening doesn't necessarily mean the model makes sense. It means that there's a lot of hype about it, which there is, and it could work out great. Don't get me wrong. I mean, it could work out great, but just because there's money behind it doesn't mean it's instantly successful.
Great. Okay. Thanks, David. We're just going to take a moment and do one last poll before everybody drops off. We'd love to get your feedback on what you thought of the webinar today. So you should see a poll come up on your screen now. If you could just take a moment and give us a rating based on how you found the session today.
While everyone's answering that poll, hopefully to help give us that feedback, like I said, we will be sending out a survey for some more detailed feedback. We would love if you fill that in for us. But I just want to take this opportunity to thank everyone for their time. I know everybody's days are busy in that. Hopefully you got something out of this webinar. We're always happy to get involved in the discussion around things like this. And as long as you guys have found this useful, we'll be doing more webinars down the road on any food and beverage related topics that we find interesting and feel that we can help add to the discussion around them. So thanks very much, and hopefully everyone got something out of this. So have a great day.
Perfect. Okay, thank you everybody for your feedback. David, there's one more question. Do you want to just answer this one last one before we drop off?
Sure, I'd love to.
Okay, somebody's asking, is the ghost kitchen concept, does it present competition for existing players in the food service industry, or does it kind of support the growth of the industry?
That's a great question. You know, I think only time will tell to some degree. I think it does provide some competition. I mean, there's no doubt that some people will order in as opposed to going out, whereas they used to go out. You know, again, 15 years ago, we didn't have delivery, or it was pretty minimal. So that's certainly competing with that dine-in segment. But to a large degree, I think moving forward, you know, a lot of people will have the same mindset that my wife and I do, which is, you know, if I'm going to spend $30 on a entree, like I'll definitely do it for convenience. But if I'm going to spend $30 on an entree, maybe order an app, maybe order a bunch of stuff, you know, often when my wife and I order takeout or delivery, we often say, you know what, if we're going to spend this much money and do this, why don't we go out? Because we want that social experience. So I think it definitely will compete in terms of the convenience factor, right? People are going to build on this, and it will eat into dine-in revenues, but I still think there's always a place for that social aspect of what consumers are, right? We want that social environment, even if it's a quick serve, even if it's just going in, looking at a menu board, being in line. You know, we like being around people, or most of us do, in a social environment. So I think a bit of both, but you know what, really only time will tell. You know, I wish I had a crystal ball. I try to sometimes, but we'll see what a year from now brings.
Awesome. Thanks, David. And that brings us to the end of our webinar today. Thank you so much, everybody, for attending. We really appreciate having you here today. And like I said, we're going to be sending out an email shortly with a recording to the webinar, as well as some contact information for us if you have any further questions or want to get in touch and learn more. But thanks for joining, and we'll see you hopefully in the next one.
Thanks, everyone.